Welcome back, everybody, to She Can't Do That.
But she did it anyway.
Yeah.
Today we have the second part of our interview with Coach Jenn Wolfe. And I'm so excited for everybody to hear this. Everybody who is in a relationship or who is not in a relationship, and that is everybody, needs to listen to this. There's so much in there, so many goodies.
Yep.
We give some stuff away from us too.
We do share nuggets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we hear it?
Let's go.
Okay, let's go. I never had to date in LA.
Yeah.
Because I met my husband like 6 months after I moved here and had no intention to even meet anybody.
That's always when it happens.
Yes. But I dated in a big town in Germany. I lived in Cologne for 10 years before I moved to LA. And that was the same feeling that I have. Like these big town dating situations there always is the problem with, there is something better waiting around the next corner.
Yeah.
So let's not get too serious here. Let's not, don't commit to anything because there might be something better at the party next weekend.
Yeah.
But that's all I'm hearing from friends of mine who are dating in LA is that's kind of the worst thing.
It is. And it's such a misconception too, because it's like so much of the good in relationships is the depth of it that you only get by committing and by sticking in it and working through all these things. So it's like that's one of my, I feel like, drives and passions is to help people understand that, because I don't feel like it's, especially the younger generation and stuff, like it's getting lost, that idea of like there's so much good in committing and staying. Yeah, of course there's always going to be someone hotter or whatever. But what are you really looking for, and trusting yourself that if you commit, that's also like a lack of trust, right? Like, oh, but if I choose this person, like what if there's someone better? It's like you're not trusting yourself to choose the right person. I think mostly as a man and as that like masculine in the relationship, it's kind of like weakening that part. And I think that's sad, because it's like so much of the good in relationships. Also the challenges for sure are in the staying, But
do you work with women more than men, or do you work with couples together?
So I do all of it. I've worked with a lot of creative men, which is what my husband is. So I feel like that's its own thing. And that's like a whole nother thing. But they can get stuck in as a creative, like they need to be able to kind of go to deeper levels within themselves. So so what I do with them is kind of like what I'm talking about in a relationship. It's like taking them to these levels that they can't get to without that dynamic, right? And then it helps them in their career and like, access these parts of themselves and get to the next level, whatever that next level is for them. And they've been some really successful men, but they're very like not happy or stuck, right? And then they're also seeing that in their relationships. So then I also work with couples who have that dynamic. It's like the creative husband. It's the creative husband, and then the woman who is very much like I was, like they've completely lost themselves and they want to be fulfilled in their marriage too. And so they usually show up in that way. So which makes sense because that's what I had to walk through. And I do mostly work with women in my practice that are either single moms or a lot of them are dating avoidance. There's like that dynamic, or they're in a relationship or married to unavoidant. Do you know what I mean when I say that? Like avoidant attachment style. They're not.
We should explain though for the listeners.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure there are people that don't know.
Yeah.
So let's start with what is attachment style. Actually, I did the quiz on your website about attachment. Taryn was right away like, oh, I know my attachment style stuff. And I didn't, because I'm married for 10 years. So I wasn't even like,
I love that.
Didn't figure out any of this over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So what is attachment style?
All right. Well, did you find out what yours is?
Yeah.
You don't want to say?
I can.
Okay. So attachment style is how we attach to people in a relationship. In a nutshell, it's formed when we're very young, like young before 5, and it's based on how our caregivers showed up for us. So if you had if you had parents that were not responsive to your needs, then you are going to probably end up on the more avoidant side because you realize, oh, relationships are not safe. They don't give me what I need. And I need to just do everything on my own. It's really the underlying message. And I'm simplifying this. Anxious attachment is when you get, it causes a lot. I mean, relationships in general just cause so much anxiety and you feel like the need to cling and like it stresses you out, like everything from like text messages to, and you make up all these stories. And that's usually if you had parents that were either overly attentive to you or they were just so unpredictable. Like you didn't know what you were going to get and it just ended up creating this anxiety in your life. Secure is like what we all want to be. And it's actually very rare to find like a super securely attached person. But over time, even if you have an anxious or avoidant attachment, you can absolutely get there, especially in a healthy relationship. But secure attachment is just parents that were super, or caregivers that just were there for your needs and did it in a really healthy way. And you don't have those issues, those attachment kind of issues in relationships. But like I said, that's very rare. Oh, and then there's anxious avoidant, which is also, you can be either. And you kind of vacillate between the two. So those are the main ones. And yeah, you definitely have a sense, without a quiz even, like knowing, because you're like, wait, I am really anxious in relationships, or I just want, like they scare me and I cut off, or I just run, and and so people do tend to know, but I would love to know what your guys's are.
Well, it's so interesting because while I was doing it, I was answering these questions with the feeling I have now with my husband, but then also thinking about how I used to be. Like the text message thing, for example, there's one question, like if you text your partner and they don't text back, like, are you getting nervous? Or do you feel like, well, that's fine, he's going to get back to me at some point?
Yeah.
Or you're like, oh my God, he has somebody else. He doesn't care about me anymore or something. Now I'm with my husband. I'm like totally fine. If he doesn't text me back, I'm not scared of anything with him. But former relationships I had, I would be a different person. So it actually turned out that I'm the secure one.
Wow.
But that's just now.
Yeah.
With
because
my
you
husband.
have had a healthy, tenure. Yeah.
It's not what I would have been in all my other relationships. Like I would have more totally be like, why is he not texting me back? He doesn't love me anymore. He found somebody else. Like the panic.
Totally.
Which I'm not anymore. So I don't even know if I can put this in relation with my upbringing.
Yeah.
Or this is just a result of my marriage.
Yeah. I would say the relation to your upbringing would be what you were before.
Yes.
Yeah. And then your relationship, which is one of the points of it, is the thing that kind of healed you and that gave you a new environment to get to secure attachment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that would be most likely the case. Sometimes though, if you were anxious before, it'll show up in other ways now. Like, I don't know if you ever feel anxious about maybe your kid or friends or anything like relationship wise, but I've noticed that just in my clients, yes, but also myself, because I used to be anxious avoidant, mostly anxious, but I was both, and I probably just so I could learn so much all these things, but I now sometimes it'll show up in like a different way, whether in a different area. So I find that to be interesting too. But the relationship itself, I think we've gotten ourselves to secure too. What about you?
I'm anxious.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my guess would be, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been in relationships with avoidance.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much always how it is. Yeah. That's
Yes.
Anxious and avoidance are like moths to a flame.
Yeah.
And my belief is because you guys have what you need to heal each other. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just the way it is. Preferably, do you find, you may not want to say this, but do you find that you're ever attracted to like a secure person?
I was in an abusive relationship and got out of that. And he was the first like guy friend that I had coming out of it.
Wow.
And it was very healing for me, but I wasn't physically attracted. Like the chemistry wasn't there.
I love that awareness. And I think it sounds like Joe to me. Like
Yeah.
It's healing, you needed it, but you were not, there wasn't that like chemistry, passion.
And I think I have my own like fortress up. And when I'm attracted to somebody, I have such a need to be adored and chosen by them. And I put on this, you know, different aura myself and this different presence myself. And I don't let my own guard down.
Yeah.
And then I get frustrated because I feel like I'm never really safe. I'm never really seen. And it's like this vicious cycle.
Totally. But I think that also brings up another point of like, you're anxious, but then also like when we're in really hard or abusive relationships, you then can become avoidant later. You know what I mean? Like, or anxious avoidant, because you're like, now you're learning to also, you need to avoid or put your fortress up, which is more of a like an avoidant thing. So I feel like it does form when we're young, but these experiences also kind of alter it, you know? And I've noticed that too. I'm sure you've noticed that. And like, that's what you're saying. So, but I love, like, I feel like the self-awareness of all of it is such a huge part of it. Like the fact that you even know that, and like, we even know that's why that quiz is on there, is like, if we can know it and we can become aware of it, if we are not aware, it literally drives the ship. If the second we start to become aware and we start to like educate ourselves of what's going on underneath the surface, we start to get more control over what we attract and who we're with, and like not repeating these things over and over. Because that's basically what we end up doing, right? Like without knowing it, we think we're choosing someone completely different. And then somehow it's like the same.
Oh yeah, this typical sentence that so many women say, like, why am I always choosing the asshole?
Totally.
Yeah, why? How would you answer this?
Yeah. There's always an answer underneath that is obviously has to do with your own experience. But let's say, you know, someone had an asshole father and they did not get the love they needed. I mean, this is I'm simplifying this, but they didn't get the love they needed. They're going to try to recreate that later in a relationship to get the love that they need from the asshole, because that's what we do in relationships. We literally recreate the environment we are in so that we can heal. That's why it's so important to like give it that opportunity for both people, right? And again, if you're in an abusive relationship, the message there is to stand up and leave, right? Like that's not a thing that you stay in. But if you're both there and you're not going to be like crossing boundaries in ways that are not acceptable physically or whatever, if both people can do the work, it's like that asshole also has the opportunity to dive in and be like, well, why am I an asshole? Why do I treat this person like this? Well, guess what? Like he probably, there's so many options. Like maybe his dad was a pushover and didn't have any success in life and his mom was resentful. And he learned unless I'm an asshole, I'm not going to have a woman or success, you know? Or it could be that his model was an asshole and he saw, you know what I mean? So there's always a reason, and it wants you to find it. If you want to have a healthy relationship, that's the key, right? Asking those questions. Why do I always attract the asshole? And you know what? Maybe it's not the worst thing if you are with an asshole at first, because you need that recreated, right? But it is the worst thing if you get stuck in it. And now you're just living your childhood over again and there's no resolution. That's the worst, right? So
how do you work with people where just one part of the couple wants to work on it and the other one does?
Yeah.
Which I feel like, I don't want to simplify it, but I feel like a lot of times it's probably more the woman who wants to work on it, and the man is like, I don't do coaching, I don't do therapy.
Oh, that happens all the time.
Okay, so it's not
I'm dealing with that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a client. They're like, well, he doesn't want to come, but and I'm like, but then you come. Like, don't do the work because your partner doesn't want to do it. If you'd be surprised at the amount of shifting that can happen just on one side. And a woman does have a lot of power in the relationship if she starts to do that work. So I call it an invitation. You're sending an invitation to your person by starting to do the work. There comes a time when they need to either accept that or not. And if they don't, that's when I'm like, then it's over. Right. You know, then it's not about lack of commitment anymore. Now it's about lack of commitment to yourself and the desires that you have for your life, right? So the commitment goes deeper than the relationship. It goes to the actual core of who you are. And am I truly committed to this thing that I want? And if my partner isn't taking the invitation to do that work, at some point, yes, you have to go. They have to experience losing you too. There's plenty of people that do lose their woman, man, whatever. And then they're like, they go through a period of time. My husband's one of them. We were separated for 3 months and at the very beginning of our relationship. And he thought that was like the way, like it was over. It was just this thing. And he had this big break. He went to go film this big movie, went to live his life. And then 3 months and he was like, what did I do? He started to just be into his life, just started to like unravel. And so many things happened. And it kind of woke him up to be like, oh, wait, no, like I really want this and I want to do whatever it takes to have it. But I had to actually stand my ground and be like, well, I'm not going to do it that way. We're going to do it this way. And I had to, as the woman, when a woman does that, and sometimes, and oftentimes I'll say a woman does it first, for whatever reason, we'll do it first. But we can't do it alone forever. That's not a possibility if you want that kind of relationship. Some women, do stay and then it's challenging. But I think to really have that relationship that I'm talking about, you need to both be on board with that.
What would you say would be one of the most impactful stories from your therapy work of somebody that's come in, whether it was impactful in a good way or a bad way? Like, what's one of your professional stories or experiences that you walk away from and you're like, I'm going to remember this day for the rest of my life?
That's a really good question. There's been a lot. I love so much like watching people transform and getting to levels that they didn't think they could, or making a relationship work that felt impossible to make a relationship work. I don't know, that's a really good, I can't think of one specifically, but I can think of the coolest thing, if we go back to attachment styles that I've seen happen multiple times, is when there's I have an anxious client, which is mostly the case. I have an anxious client and they're with an avoidant and they're like, this is impossible and it's not going to work. And I'm like, everything feels like not going to happen. And then they start doing that work. They start doing that work. And the avoidant will, just by them doing that work, that's why this is the answer to your question, will start to transform too. And it'll start to like literally heal both of them just by doing that work on one side. But then of course, then they end up coming in and doing the work too. So seeing those, and I've lived that too, like seeing those transformations of the seemingly impossible circumstances then turn around. And I've also worked with couples who there's been infidelity and there's been betrayals that seem like they're completely impossible to forgive, but then they end up becoming some of the deepest lessons that they learn, and they end up being closer than ever after that infidelity, because through that crisis they realized, oh hey, I wasn't happy and this is why. And then they start to actually have real conversations instead of fake ones, and they start to go really deep and create intimacy, which is what was lacking, right? And then it's like that affair actually is the thing that like cemented them.
Yeah,
and
transform them.
It's a better way to say it, yeah. So those are probably the moments where I'm like amazed by, and I think it's, again, so important to tell those stories, because I think people sometimes just don't believe that that's even possible, and I'm of the belief that you can overcome pretty much anything, again, with exceptions of certain things.
Yeah.
I'm not advocating for like anything
there
that's
are disclaimers,
harmful to your, disclaimers, yeah. But I think if I had a mission, like that would be the most clear one is, I do have a mission, but like of the things of just like giving that hope when it feels 100% hopeless, and there's just this tiny glimmer that sometimes people need. And then from that place, it's just like amazing things can happen.
That must feel so good to you to turn it around, right? Like to have this relationship where both or one is just like, this is hopeless. And then to see this transformation, that it actually is not hopeless and that it works and that they're actually happier on the other end.
It is.
must feel so amazing to
It's
you.
so fulfilling. It
Yeah.
is so fulfilling. It really is. And I think part of it is just that. I remember having one husband come to me, which is very rare for the husband to come and be like, I want to save my marriage and make this work. And he was like, and he tells me like all the really, quote, terrible things that have happened, and he's done this and that. And I just looked at him and I'm like, well, there's hope. And he was like, there is. Like it was like,
yes.
wait, you're telling me there's hope? And for him to even like know that or even hear that made him kind of, then he like, it's like contagious, you know? And he just needed to know that there was even a possibility of a way forward. And they're one of the couples that I'm like, they went through 2 like 6-month programs with me. And they came out on the other side completely different and happy and amazing, and in their like second phase of marriage, which I call it. So, and that's always what I say. I'm like, I've been married twice, but to the same person. One marriage, the first part, totally different than the second, and it was that transformation that I help people take on now that created that second marriage. It does feel like a totally different marriage. It's so interesting, you know, because you do become a different person through that.
And you go through phases in your marriage. I think a lot of married people, children, especially the ones that I know, can relate to that they're like, we were a different couple before children, during children, and after children. A lot of them don't make it to the part of after children. Not after. I mean, you always have your children, but you know what I mean? Like the
after
typical,
the raising them.
like the 10, 15, 20 years that your focus shifts, let's put it that way. What is your advice for couples to go through these phases and make it out on the other side?
Of the child raising?
Yeah. Just sometimes it's just long term and everybody concentrates on their own life, and like the typical sentence, oh, we just lost the spark.
Totally. Yeah.
You've probably heard that more than enough.
100%. It's an intention. You have to stay very intentional about fanning the spark, the flames in that spark. If you don't focus on it and make it a priority, you will lose it. It's just too hard to keep it if you're not working on it constantly. And it's not, it is, part of it is this hard inner work stuff, but also part of it is like, don't forget to date. You know what I mean? Don't forget to do like exciting things or take a trip, just the two of you, right? Or treat each other the way that you did when you were trying to win each other over, right? And trying to be together. That's the stuff that just falls away too easily unless you have the intention of, like, for one example is my husband and I connect every morning over coffee, and our jobs let us do this. Not everybody's jobs you can do this, but we'll connect in the morning and we'll talk about like, how do you feel? Like, where are we at, you know, with our lives and this and that. And then at night, and I feel like we like bookend the day with that. And part of the reason that's so important to me is because I grew up in a house where they weren't connected at all. So I feel like keeping those points of connection also goes along with that intention that this marriage, this partnership is super important to us. It's not an autopilot thing. You know what I mean? And I think that's hard to remember over like time. Just like 10 years.
It's very hard to do too. If I just think of my own thing, everybody kept saying that in the beginning when I was pregnant, or stuff like, oh, you got to keep dating and you got to go on dates and stuff. But then my daughter didn't like any babysitter. She was just screaming when she was not with me or maybe with him. She was screaming her lungs out. And so I was like, I'm not going to be relaxed anywhere when I know my daughter's at home screaming. Like, I can't be on a relaxed romantic date. So we tried to like do date night at home. Just like today we call it date night. We watch a movie and we order food, and this is our date night.
And that's fine.
And it was also a cost thing. Like
totally.
What a babysitter cost, what it costs to go out in LA. It's like, it's going to cost us $200 to go on a freaking date. We don't have that right now.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
It's so easy to say, but it's really difficult to do. And then you're tired. And like, even now, our daughter is 10 and we went on our first trip last year.
Yeah.
The first time my husband and me on a trip for like 3 nights away.
Wow.
His mom was taking care of our daughter. And she afterwards, I mean, she had fun and it was great and everything for her, but she afterwards told us we shouldn't do that again.
That's hilarious. Well, yeah.
Because she wants to be with us and not with anybody else.
Yeah.
There comes the guilt again. But she's 10 and that was our first trip.
Yeah.
First nights away alone without her. And the dating thing too. And then we had it the other night where he wanted to have a conversation with me. And this is like kind of the only time we get. She's in bed. He comes home late. He eats his dinner. We're sitting in bed. We normally watch a show for 30 minutes and then fall asleep. He wanted to talk about something. And I was just like, I don't have the energy to talk.
Right.
Like,
totally understandable.
I'm so tired. I work so much right now. I just don't want to talk. And at the same time, I feel guilty about it because like, ooh, that's where relationships end if you don't put the effort and the energy in it.
Well, if you don't do it for like a prolonged amount of time and and you're not making it an intention.
Yeah, this one night is not going to kill our marriage.
And being willing, like I heard it once described as like, if you can't bring 100% of yourself, they make up for that, whatever part's missing, like they can carry it for you for that night or whatever. And there's been plenty of times where I'm like, after, coaching or whatever, I'm just like, I cannot have another conversation. Yes. And he's like, okay, well, just put on Netflix tonight. Like all that stuff it's so true and relatable and it's raising kids. But there is I think still that intention of your relationship comes first, right? Even before your kids. And I think that's also not always true for people. So I think it's just an understanding because the fact is, if you want to be with this person for your life, right, after kids, they're leaving. Your children are leaving. They're going to go live their lives on their own. We are raising them to be independent. And then we have each other. And that's our person. And like, that's who we're going to be with. So there has to be that kind of reminder when you have the child all the time that, yes, they do technically take up a lot of our time and attention, but that doesn't mean they come, quote, first. And actually, they've done studies where children don't want to come first. They want their parents actually to put each other first or to be more important because they don't like the feeling of they're in control or that they are more important.
It's too much pressure.
It's too much pressure. Yeah. It's like the metaphor I heard of like being on a flight. You're always looking at the flight attendant to like see if it's a safe flight or not.
If she looks nervous, then you're in trouble.
Yeah. So they're looking to you too. And they're also looking to you. They're learning what a relationship is, right? So,
oh my God, what gives you more safety than
knowing that
happy
you love
parents?
Totally. And even more so, they've learned the well-being of the mother is actually the most important thing that affects the child the most. So the husband understanding that too is so important for your relationship. It's hard not to build resentment when you have a partner that like doesn't understand that or doesn't support that, and that's naturally going to kill that connection too. So if you are exhausted and you say, I don't want to talk, the best case scenario would be like, he'd be like, okay, well, can I give you a massage or what can I do for you? Let me just make you a bubble bath or whatever. And my husband's gotten really good at that, but he hasn't always because they're not really taught to do that. They're not really, if they don't see that growing up, they're not going to naturally do it. They have to learn, and then I think that's part of it too. So both people's needs have to be met at all times. But the overall intention is, okay, this person comes first. We're not going to let it slide. And I don't really mean, by the way, romantic dates, because those are actually exhausting, I feel like, at this point, don't you think?
Oh, yes.
And expensive and just like...
Yes.
But
there's so much pressure.
Totally.
I feel like when I'm going like on a date with my husband right now, it's like, oh my God, and we need to talk about something. We're not allowed to talk about the children or work.
Totally.
Like it's kind of like this rule, right? That everybody tells you, like if you want to date, don't talk about the children or work. And then you're like what? But what is there? What else is there? And we need to make this romantic, and we need to have the sparks
so much pressure.
back.
Pressure and expectations.
There's so much pressure and expectations.
Yeah,
and I need to feel butterflies again. Why am I not feeling those butterflies anymore and stuff? It's just
And
No.
that is part of the issue, like why marriages don't make it, because there's all of these expectations. There's these cultural things we're told, like happily ever after. And like, it's not happy all the time. There's a reason those fairy tales end right then, because they're like,
They always end with the wedding. Always.
Always.
Always. Yeah, I don't want to know. I don't want to
And
know.
then we're
what
just told, oh,
Aladdin
it's
and
happily ever
Jasmine.
after. If you followed those people.
No, it is not.
I want to
the
see
wedding.
Aladdin and Jasmine in 10 years.
Right?
Let's make
Like,
a
of
new
course
fairy
they're-
tale. Yeah,
Exactly.
It's another one of my goals, because it's people then think there's something wrong with their relationship if they're not happily ever after or happy all the time, or they don't feel butterflies. You fall in and out of love. You don't have butterflies all the time. That's partly science. Like,
Oh, also, it's probably healthy and good. You
It's
can't
good.
exist when you're in this, like, I'm so in love butterfly stage.
Right.
That wouldn't make you a good
You
person
can't
for
focus
10
on
years.
anything.
No, exactly. You don't do anything
there's a
else.
chemical, there's all this stuff that's happening for a reason to bond you. But then once you're bonded, you don't need that anymore.
Like, I remember my ex, the avoidant one, we were together for 3 years, but we worked together for 9 months before we were romantic. And I was getting the craziest butterflies, and I was doing interior design for him. And I remember calling my sisters on the way to meet him as a client. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. I'm going to go meet that guy again. Da, da, da. And I had the craziest butterflies. And
Exactly.
yeah, it's just,
Because you're feeling, and we associate like a high to that. Like we have this like high, and we're like, oh, this is how it needs to be. And
I
or
thought
this
that
is
was
love,
it. Like, I
or-
was like, this
Totally.
is going to be the relationship. I've never felt this way about somebody. I am like head over heels, and he has no idea. And I also was like, I was so just excited. I mean, he was everything that I thought I'd been wanting. And yeah,
But it is one of the greatest feelings ever.
Yes.
it is.
Being freshly in love,
Yeah. I mean, there's not,
there's almost nothing better.
I agree.
That was a very reckless time for me, I think.
What do you mean reckless?
Being in love.
Yeah, because it was the first time I was in love after my abusive relationship. And I think I had a lot of, like, I didn't trust myself to know when somebody was good or bad. And I didn't know, everything was like worst case scenario. Everything was like the apocalypse. Like, if he didn't call me back
That was
within
I
a couple
get that.
hours, or if he didn't respond to a text message, it was like,
Doom.
yeah,
Like you couldn't function.
I catastrophized everything in my head.
Totally. Anxious.
And yeah,
Well, that's not a good way of living.
but that was where I was at and still am. And I think there's a part of myself that even now I'm working to recover from, if like, I don't know how to trust if somebody has a dark side or not. Because the person that was a total monster to me on paper and at first glance looks great. And he was the most charming, love bombing, all of those things. And so it just,
Well, if I could speak to that.
yeah.
Everyone has a dark side.
Oh,
So
no.
you're never going to be able to get away with it. But this is the difference, though. My husband had a super dark side, but so did Jason. And the difference was, and what you're saying, like when someone is abusive, they are refusing to take responsibility for their dark side. And they are refusing to protect their loved ones from their dark side. So when you are willing to take responsibility and actually not only protect your loved ones, but learn from it and grow from it and become a better person, that is really, I think, what you're looking for. Not someone without a dark side, because you're never, you probably honestly won't even be attracted to that.
Yeah.
We aren't attracted to, because I don't think we trust it. We're like, no, every human, and what you call a dark side, I think might be different than what you're saying. Everyone has their challenges and their places they need to grow, right? But there's a difference between someone who's willing to take responsibility for that, especially a man, and someone who will not, and therefore it just hurts everybody around them. And that's the major difference. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So trusting yourself that maybe is a different thing than saying that I don't trust myself if someone doesn't have a dark side versus trusting yourself that you will recognize now someone, because you now know what it's like to have someone who won't take responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But you probably will recognize really well now someone that is willing to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, because also I think love is like not really love if we don't love the darkness in our
Right.
people. Like you probably have dark sides and we all have different dark sides, or what we would consider that.
Mm-hmm.
If someone didn't love us for that, that would not be love, right? But we also don't want to hurt them with it, which is easier said than done. We all do it, but that's the journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Easier said than done, I know, but I think it's a journey.
I think
You're on.
I am definitely on a journey. Because even now, so yeah, he was very avoidant. And I remember before we were romantic, and I was like, we had been working together. Some of my girlfriends that knew what I had been through and the abusive relationship that I had been in, knew kind of like, Taryn, this might not be the best relationship for you because this person is gone half the time. That's going to be really hard for you. This person is very private and you need to feel safe. You need total transparency. You need to feel like they're not hiding anything. And I went into it anyway because of the pull and the magnetism. And
Totally.
yeah, I also trusted a little bit. I was like, well, I'll know if he's a bad guy. And I still think he's a great guy. But it brought out some of like the worst traits.
And that
of
was
me.
the relationship after your marriage?
Yeah.
So you ended that?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I think that's the hardest part, is being willing to even like step into, because in order to find it out, you have to actually be in a relationship with that person.
Yeah.
And that's the only other option, right? Like otherwise we're just avoiding a relationship altogether, which I know.
I was proud of myself going into that relationship and opening my heart up again and like not thinking the worst all the time. And not being jaded by like thinking all men are abusive. All men are going to have this dark side. All men are.
Totally.
I was proud of myself for going into that. But then there were a lot of things that it showed me that I still need to work on. And now I just think I'll be single forever because I don't.
No, unless you want to be. No, you're just willing to, like you, I think that's such a beautiful example of like, you could trust yourself because it ended. You didn't get back, you know what I mean? Like you didn't repeat the cycle and you learned from it and you were super conscious, like you were aware of what you were doing every step. Whereas before you probably weren't. And so then the next one, it's even more so like that, right?
Yeah.
And I think the willingness to do that is huge after what you've been through. And by the way, when I say dark side, I don't mean that everyone's abusive, right? I just mean, I mean like everyone has their shadow, as we would call it in psychology, that part of us that we want so badly not to be there, or that we try so hard to push away, but it's there. And the more we actually embrace it and like look at it, which is what relationships help us do, the less control it has over us, right? Or the less power it has over us. And I would imagine like even your ex-husband, do you talk to him or no?
Only if it pertains to
the child.
The child, my daughter.
Your daughter,
the
child.
The child, the offspring.
So there's like no contact at all.
No.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
What tip would you give Taryn?
I would say the biggest thing for you is to stay open.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's the hardest thing.
Yeah, that 3-year relationship taught me so much and showed me how much I need to work on still. But I think we both had things, and yeah, it's been like 8 months since that relationship ended. And I don't think I'm totally even over it yet. And I think I'm just kind of focused on me right now.
And that's important, but I will say also that I think another tip is not to think that you're supposed to do that work by yourself. Like that is actually, you can only do so much work by yourself, and the rest is just going to have to happen in a relationship. So I think when we understand that, we're not looking for, we think we're looking for perfect and happily ever after. What we're actually looking for is just a partner that will do the work with us and that won't leave, or vice versa. Those two people, that combination, I think can overcome everything.
That's exactly why it was reckless, was because I didn't have the training wheels when I first started dating again.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was like a crazy scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the self-awareness. But now you're right. I could bring the self-awareness to the table and say,
Totally.
you know, I tend to go to worst case scenarios. So if you're going to be on a business trip for a week, can you just like call me a few times and just check in?
That's so healthy. And that's one of the things, I don't know if it's anxious or just also women, we have such a hard time expressing our needs, just like you just said.
Yeah.
Like thinking that like somehow that's not, we don't have permission to do that. And
right.
Oftentimes that's all the guy needs. He just needs some sort of clarity or direction as to what you need, or how can I be there for you? When they have that, and if we're willing to be vulnerable and ask for it, that's all you need. That's all that is. It's not like you don't have to be this certain way. It's just that you are this way. So in return, can you do this for me? Over time, that will actually heal you being that way.
Oh, that does sound exciting.
Yeah.
The problem, I think, what so many women, me included, have with not voicing what we want is that we want them to,
100%.
I want him, I want it to come from him. I don't want to tell him he needs to reach out to me every day. I want him to want to reach out to me every day.
Okay.
You know?
Yes, you're hitting on like the biggest thing I think women do. Like one of the biggest things we do. We're like, well, if we say it, it won't mean anything.
Exactly. That's what I mean. If I tell him to bring me flowers, then the flowers don't mean anything. I want him to think about it.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's that they don't.
They don't think about it.
Most of the time they don't.
Oh
because
my God.
They just are so different than us.
Yeah.
It's just so, because if we would think about that and we would do that, but they don't. But the second you do voice it and you do say something, it's done. It's done most of the time, right? Like, and especially if you say it in a way where you're like, I need this, or when you do this, do you mind, like, or maybe just one time, like when you go to the market, like if you see flowers and you brought me some, that would actually mean so much to me, because I feel like then you were like thinking of me or whatever, just one time. Then they have now had that programmed in their brain, and they really, at the end of the day, men just want to please, and they want to serve, right? Like the masculine, I talk about the masculine and the feminine a lot. So the masculine is all about serving and providing and doing, and like that's how they're happiest, right? And we all have masculine energy in us too. So we're both. But in a masculine feminine relationship, the masculine just wants to, that's the role they want. But the only reason they're not doing it a lot of times is because they don't know what to do. They don't know how. They don't know what you need, because it is so hard for women to say that, right? So the feminine is about receiving. And it's part of receiving is also being willing to let your partner know what you need to receive, right? And guiding them. And it doesn't mean that they're doing it, that if they do it, they don't mean it. It means they just didn't know. They didn't know, right? It's a totally different thing. So it's a battle, and I think we all have it, but the feminine is all about receiving and being vulnerable and staying open. And part of staying open is being willing to actually use your voice.
But that's sometimes such a small balancing act, because we fight a lot about these things at home, where I feel like he needs to step up more, he needs to do more.
Yeah.
The stupidest thing, making dinner, doing laundry, vacuuming, housework, stuff like that. I'm working, he's working, we have a child, like, why should I do most of this stuff? And then we had these conversations where my husband said, well, you got to tell me what to do, because I don't really see it that much. And that made me even more mad, because like that just put something else on my plate that I have to tell you what to do. Like I have a child that I tell what to do all day long. I don't want a husband and have to tell my husband what to do. I want you to see the laundry basket is full. Do the freaking laundry. I do not want to have to tell you, oh, do you see the laundry basket full? Can you do the laundry? That is such a turnoff for me that I'd rather do it myself.
So then, and have you told him that?
Yes.
You've said that.
We have this conversation
often.
a lot. And we're talking a lot about the mental load on mothers, which is a big topic now.
On Instagram, totally.
But that's what it is. Like we had this example the other day where we last week, on Wednesdays, Terry and my daughters go to jazz dance, which is from 5 to 6. Normally we eat dinner between 5 and 6. But if they have jazz dance from 5 to 6, we eat dinner after 6, of course. I had a meeting, though, that I knew would go up till like 6 p.m. maybe. So I was like, Taryn, can you take, if I'm not going to be there, can you take my daughter home with you? And then I come home. So I was thinking the day before already, okay, I'm not going to have time to make dinner. We have to have something ready. So I made dinner at 9 a.m. to have it, I just need to warm up. These are thoughts that most men don't have. Like my husband comes home on days where he's responsible for dinner, like Saturday, Sunday, he's responsible for dinner. He comes home late, then something happens at his work he needs to deal with. It's 6:20, everybody's hungry. Nobody has an idea what are we going to have for dinner. I get aggressive because I'm like, what the heck? Like I'm hangry.
Yeah.
It's 6:20. And he's like, oh, yeah, it's time to make dinner. That makes me so mad that I even have to think about it. It's like, I want this Saturday and Sunday. I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, it's the mental load that you're wanting to have a break from.
And I can't really blame him or get mad at him for it because I think there is such a it's such difference. That's just what it is. Women or mothers and fathers are different when it comes to that. Like my brain is constantly going, what is at 5 p.m.? What is at 6 p.m.? What is after this? What's tomorrow? What am I going to cook now so she has something for lunch tomorrow? Like all these things, men just live in the moment, I feel like.
They have very different brains, for sure. They don't multitask oftentimes.
Oh, that on top of
that's
it.
That's a different facet. Yeah.
But how do I deal with this thing? Like my friend, for example, she said, oh, I make my husband a list of things that need to be done this day. And I'm like, oh, that is so an upturn for me. I want a husband who sees the things and does the things. I do not want to tell him, can you please vacuum? I want him to see we need to vacuum. I'm going to get the vacuum cleaner, vacuum the floor.
So and there's always a why. Why do you want that? Because you don't have that, right? You're telling me you don't have that husband. So why?
I have it more and more because we're very good, and I have to credit him for that. We're very good in communicating.
Okay.
He's my first relationship who makes me talk. That's why we're still together. That's every other relationship did not work out because I did not want the conflict. And I was always like, oh, no, everything's fine. It's okay. Let's keep going. And I was boiling inside. And at some point, there was so much bottled up that you couldn't save the relationship.
100%.
And my husband is like, no, you're not okay. What's going on? Like he's the first man in my life who doesn't want the conflict, but who wants clarity, who wants to talk about it, who wants to figure out, who's interested in my feelings, and that's why we're still together. Like that's completely 100% credit to him.
Yeah.
So I have huge. More and more the husband that does the thing on its own, but I feel like it's a lot of work, and we're always falling back into that I come home and it's like, oh, this is the third day the laundry basket is overflowing. Is he going to see it at some point, or do I have to bring it up? Like, I don't want to bring it up.
That's the key. So first of all, so it sounds like because you chose a husband who was like super emotionally intelligent is what it sounds like. Emotionally available, wants to connect with you and take care of your feelings, which is super important to you. Not so much the daily tasks. And all you really can do, which is what it sounds like you've done, usually the main problem is women are not voicing their needs and desires. That's the first, and it's a really hard block to overcome, especially for people that have been traumatized and there's a lot of women that have been, about using their voice, and it can feel like impossible to do that. Once you do that, and they are not, and they know exactly what you need, and they're consistently not meeting that need, then is it worth ending the marriage over, right? Or because there's a new, the Mel Robbins let them theory. Like the theory is just let them. Like you can't control other people. You can't force him to do the laundry. You can't. All you can do is tell him, I really need you to it. And maybe it's the way too that I don't know if you've said it like in a and I don't mean this in like a bad way. I just mean like in a frustrated tone, or if you said it from a vulnerable place of like, I really need this to feel supported. I am freaking exhausted. The mental load is just too much for me, and I feel like I'm going to break. I could really use your support in this way, right? That's a different way to say like, do the freaking laundry, asshole. I'm sick of this crap. You don't do anything around here. Totally
That's probably
different.
what happened the most with me, because I see the laundry basket 3 days in a row and then nothing is happening. And then I get so mad that I was like,
well, then
what
you're
the
dealing,
heck?
okay, so that's an interesting point. When you come at it like that, almost like a mother, right? Like a pissed off mother, then you're going to get a rebellious child.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
You come at it like I'm your woman that needs something from you, you're probably going to get a different response. So let's say that's a great step. Like, okay, I need to shift the way that I'm saying this. And you can even take responsibility. Be like, I think I've approached this wrong. I'm so sorry. I get so frustrated that I literally attack you. Let me try saying this a different way. I am so overwhelmed with life. Like I'm exhausted. I'm trying to do all these things, and I'm so grateful to have you as a partner emotionally, but I feel like I need you more physically in these areas. Like, or else I don't know if I just can't like thrive the way that I want to. Saying it from that place in a vulnerable and more needy and way is actually really challenging, because it is much easier to just yell at them. So shifting the way you say it is A. B, letting them then fail and not punishing them, right? But what if you just didn't touch the laundry basket? You didn't mention it. Like, what would happen? Eventually, he would have to do it, right? Or would you take over and do it? Because that's the other thing.
At some point, I would do it because I want clean laundry and I want my daughter to have her school uniform.
Right.
Because at some point, she's coming to me. It's like, Mom, I ran out of uniforms. And I'm like, yeah, this happens. Because nobody's doing the laundry.
Yeah. And I think a better thing than you doing that, because it's so exhausting, is saying, hey, did you notice the laundry was full? Do you mind grabbing that? Like just little, like, because enough of those where you don't actually save him from it, he'll start to learn like, oh, she's not going to actually do this. Same thing with Saturday and Sundays. If you're not responsible for dinner on those days and he doesn't do dinner, nobody eats. Oftentimes as women, we want to save our partners from their consequences. But the problem is with boundaries, which is what you're really trying to build to, is you have to be willing to enforce them. Right? So if you say, I really need this from you, and in fact, if you don't do it, I'm not going to do it, then actually being willing to not do it is part of the hardest part, because that means your daughter might not have laundry or you guys might not eat dinner. But he needs to experience the consequence of, otherwise what you're saying is kind of like full of hot air, right? Like when we're saying something, but we don't really mean it. And men know that. I feel like they can figure that out. They're like, well, she's not really serious, so I'm not going to do it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's like a nuanced, and then also then if I was coaching you and we were talking about this, I would also dive into why is it
such a big problem for me to even voice it? Because 100%. I think that's the biggest problem, that I'm like, I don't want to tell him what to do, because I already have a child whom I tell what to do. I don't want him to be in the position that I need to tell him what to do. I want him to see it for himself. I think that's my biggest thing about it, because it would be so easy to say, hey, honey, could you do the laundry? He would do the laundry right away. It's not that he would say,
totally,
no, I don't want to. And he tells me, I just don't see it like you see it. He doesn't walk in the bedroom and the first thing he sees is a full laundry basket. Or he doesn't see the bathroom as dirty when I see it as dirty and stuff like that. He's like, I don't feel like this needs to be scrubbed when I feel like it needs to be scrubbed. So yeah, it's interesting to find out why I have such a big problem telling
when there's
him.
an issue that won't go away like that, like one of our repeating fights for 18 years is emotional. And like for my husband to be there for me emotionally, it's really hard for him. And I know that that's my partner and he's gotten much better. Like what you're saying, he's gotten better, but it's not where I want it to be. So I literally feel like I have to give him a script of like what to say when I'm feeling a certain way, or he'll get defensive when I just need him to be there for me. And I've had to come to the place where like, yes, he still has improvement, but I need to understand why this is so important to me and why this bothers me so much. And that's what I was saying earlier. That's me taking responsibility for my part of it. Oftentimes we can't necessarily do that in this time for you, but when you get to the root and you find it, either that thing stops bothering you or and it just kind of shifts, or you're not all of a sudden going to not have a problem letting him know that the laundry is there. The reality is you're stronger at that than him. I'm stronger emotionally than my husband. These are just areas that we're stronger in. And so thank God for that, because we balance each other out, right? Like if he was really focused on the laundry, could he be doing what he does? You know what I'm saying? Like he needs that focus and attention because they don't multitask. So if he's focused on something, he's not going to see that. So is it really a big deal for you to be like, the laundry's full? Can you do it? Technically, no, but the fact that it is for you is what matters. And that's the beginning of the question and the kind of deeper thing of like, okay. And now that you've said that out loud and you've asked yourself that question, you're going to start to get answers. They'll just start to come up. You'll have like a memory of being like, oh, like you have a flashback of like my mom at this and the laundry machine. I don't know. Something. But there's something that's wanting you to like see it. Does that make sense? Because that's how it works. If we're not going to see it, then something in our life is going to point to it over and over and over again until we get it. So I think that's really important to understand too, because sometimes we do leave the relationship being like, I'm going to find someone who can emotionally do this for me. And then you find yourself in somehow the same situation, because the point is actually to learn something, not to like skirt around it or avoid it.
Yeah.
And that's hard. So I think that's like the most frustrating thing for people is like, they're like, how did I get myself in this again? Like, how is this? How? You know, because there's something in it. So just find it and then you'll break the pattern.
You're talking about a lot about the masculine and feminine thing. And Taryn and I talked about this once, where Taryn and I are very different. She said once, if I can out you there.
I'm so curious what you're going to say.
I know, she's like, what is she going to tell me? What's she going to say about me? About this dating app where the woman has to do the first step. The woman has to reach out first, right?
Yeah.
You were like on this dating app.
Bumble. Yeah.
Oh, Bumble. Okay. I was never on a dating app in my life. So I don't have that experience.
You guys are so lucky. Oh my gosh. I deleted my apps, by the way, because I'm just like,
I know so many.
frustrated.
I know so many people who are and who tried it, and good and bad stories from it. But you said that the one where the woman has to reach out first is not your thing.
Yeah.
Because you don't really...
I struggled with Bumble because I am old-fashioned. I like the guy approaching me. I don't like my own energy if I feel like I'm making the first move. And so I was always put off by that.
And I'm kind of the opposite. Every relationship I was in and am in, I was the one making the first move.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, so you guys are like total...
Do you have an opinion on this?
As far as like the masculine, feminine?
Masculine,
well, that would be
roles in relationships.
I do. Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying about, so feminine is not going to, it's not about making the first move, but you can, as in so let's say feminine energy and masculine energy. We all have both, okay? But some of us are more at our core, we're more feminine, or maybe some are more masculine. You can be a woman and be masculine. You can be a man and be feminine, all of the things. Usually though, and even in same sex, I'm like, it's all the same. A masculine and a feminine are like, magnets. Okay. They're going to attract each other. So if you're more of a masculine core woman, you are going to attract a more feminine man. who is oftentimes emotionally intelligent and all that stuff. And feminine is not like, because everyone has both. So it's not saying like you're like a woman or whatever. It's like you're just those qualities of that kind of energy, which happen to be more emotionally available and receptive and nurturing. Like there's certain aspects to it, right? Masculine is go-getter. They're clear. They have direction. Like the energy. So I need to tap into the masculine for my work all the time. And I create safe spaces for people. That's masculine quality. There's all that stuff. But in dating, like what you're explaining, I did think the Bumble thing was interesting until I heard something explain, like back in the day, a woman would like drop a handkerchief if she saw a guy that she wanted to like. So in a way, she actually would select the man that she wanted to come and pick up her handkerchief, but she wouldn't be the person.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. So it's so you can absolutely put out an invitation again as a woman without actually taking on the masculine
of like making
energy.
The first move.
And that's
God,
a very
lots of time-
different energy.
That's a
Yes.
shift, because I always thought of it as like making the first move, which is
Right.
why I was like anti.
Exactly.
But if it's not making the first move, it's actually opening
Inviting
a door,
them to make a move.
making an invitation.
That's sometimes just a look you give somebody in
it
a bar.
Absolutely.
It's like
It's
you
no different.
allow them to come over and
you.
invite themselves, talk to you, whatever.
And they're
I
looking
do that all
for
the time. It works great.
It does because they think about how vulnerable that is though to make the first move. So they have to know they're going to look for signs that they're not going to get rejected. Letting them look into your eyes and
You
like
make the eye contact, but you're not going to put down your drink and walk to them.
100%, or you can smile, like little things that let them know, yes, you can come and get me or whatever. But doing the actual pursuing is a more masculine trait or energy.
That's me.
Okay. So then
I walk over and say,
yeah.
Like,
so then that's where you're more
me your phone
comfortable.
number.
Yeah. Give me your phone number now. Give it to me. I love that though. And I love that you own that, you know. I would actually though curious to have you take the quiz on masculine feminine energy, because
no. Oh, there is one?
Yeah, there is one.
Oh.
I would like you to, because sometimes that happens because you had to do that. Like that's what women tend to take over the masculine when the masculine's not doing the thing, right?
Oh, it happened to my dad.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
So
you
what
gotta
is
take that
your
quiz.
real true core? That's the question.
Interesting.
It's not necessarily what you're, quote, comfortable doing now.
Mhm.
It's what you want in your life will actually reveal your core energy. So, and what you want in your relationship, which from what you're telling me, you want masculine because you want him to take charge. You want him to do the thing, right?
Yes. Oh my God. I just want to let go for once, kind of.
Well-
but I'm also not choosing these kind of people. If I'm the masculine go-getter and I'm choosing the one that are like emotionally intelligent, that have more like the feminine side, then that's a problem.
Well, it's a problem if that's not really your most authentic self. If you're choosing something from a place that's more like you became that way because you had to versus that's really who you are. You can totally shift that dynamic in your marriage though. So I think that's actually it's already an answer to the question. You actually really just want him to be in his masculine, I think, so that you can just relax. Because part of being in the feminine is completely surrendering and letting go. Like how we all breathed earlier. We're just that sounds amazing. That's where we're at our best, actually. So you really just want him to tap into more of his masculine, which you can shift by kind of what I just said practically. You have to be in your feminine. You can choose to be in your feminine more. But if you're not trusting that if you let go, like all hell's going to break loose, then it's really hard for us to do that.
Oh, I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
That I'm like, if I'm not keeping this
So the only way to really do that
thing,
is
nothing's going to work.
Well, yes, and to challenge that belief. Is that really true? Or is it just that the laundry might not get done? Like, is it really? And that's the question, like, is it really true? And then another really great way to start to shift into your feminine, if you have that issue, which so many women do, of being stuck in the masculine, because this is where we stay safe, right? Or we feel like we're safe if we're taking charge, is we start to do what we love to do for the sake of just doing it. You're not doing anything productive. You're not actually getting anything done. You're doing it because of the feeling it brings you, like literal bliss. And for me, this is something like spending time in nature, getting a massage, like just shopping, just things that, and it's so personal for everybody. And if you forget, which is not hard to, you might forget as a woman, you're like, what the hell do I love? Remember as a child, what did you do just to play? What did you do, right? And for me, I used to play with animals. I would ride horses. I would do all these things in nature. And, I would play piano. I bought a piano just for this point, and then my sons actually play it now. But I just wanted to like sit down and play a musical instrument. That's what I used to love to do. These are things that we not only forget, but we think that they're pointless. They're actually hugely important.
Oh my God, that's why I take singing lessons.
Yes.
Because I love nothing more than singing.
I love that.
It feels so stupid.
See, that's a perfect example.
Why am I doing this?
Example.
Like, I'm not 18 anymore. I'm not going to go to musical school like I dreamed of. Like, why am I even doing this? And then sometimes I think like, because I just love it.
Because you love it. And now you can attach it to, and it's going to help even my marriage. Like, it'll even help me in my marriage because it's actually putting you into your feminine, and you can bring, the more you tap into that, the more you know what that feels like, and you can kind of bring that into your home environment. There's nothing more attractive, honestly, to the masculine, or more like inspiring for someone to tap into their masculine than just being in your feminine. And he's gonna be like, oh, something different about you. You're hot.
Well, and I think
that
is so important, because just taking this back to my dating patterns, like, I don't think I fully tap into my feminine and show that free spirit and the wild energy that I have unless I feel safe in a relationship.
That's normal. That's how it is.
Yeah.
And we are not in our feminine. We will not unless we feel safe. And that's huge. And sometimes it's like we don't feel safe because of the thoughts. But not necessarily because of the reality.
Right.
And from what you're telling me, you actually are in a very safe marriage.
Yeah.
Just not one where all the things get done that you want. But if you were to truly get into that feminine and let yourself really embrace that, you are safe enough, from what you're telling me, to do that, right? So sometimes
and we have
that's
never not eaten on the weekend, just saying.
Exactly. Right? I mean, it's impossible. I'm hungry. DoorDash. Like,
exactly. And even if it's okay, I'm going to go and pick something up, or it's an hour late. We've never not eaten.
And that's the point. It might not be how you would do it or how you would want it, but it's him doing it, and he's taking care of it, right? Yeah. And you're right. You've never starved. And I would like to see how long you could let the laundry go until
But for Taryn, it's like, with the bad experience that she has, it's so hard and difficult to let go, because we just said, like, you need to feel safe. But like, how is she supposed to feel safe with the experience she had?
I have an example for that, because I had a breakthrough in my women's group last night where, and I think I tapped on this earlier, is I think it's self-awareness. Because I think in the beginning of my relationship, the 3-year one, that taught me so much, I think I was reckless because I wasn't self-aware. But if I were to go into a relationship where I am now much more self-aware and be able to communicate that, I have a need without feeling bad, saying that and voicing that, then I think I would feel safe. And then I could be that person that all of my girlfriends know I am, but it's harder for me to show men, because the men I choose are hard for me to let my guard down.
Yeah. So because you're single, like right now is actually the perfect time to start working on this even before you meet someone. So like what you just said, I need to feel safe. So how can I feel safe within myself? Because what you just said, with that awareness, you didn't even feel safe within yourself to express the need.
Mm-hmm.
Because you would also turn against yourself. You'd feel
Yeah.
guilty and you'd feel this. So we already know, okay, you need practice expressing your needs. Tell them to her. You know what I mean? Like the people that you're, that are even around you, even your daughter, like model it for her. You know, like I just need like an hour of space or silence or I just
An
need,
hour?
I don't know.
Ask
I
for
need
2
I need
minutes.
to go get I just need to recalibrate my nervous system. Whatever, you know, like go get a massage or mommy needs 5 minutes. You start there. And maybe that's good. That's true too for you. Like, are you creating a safe space to be in your feminine? And do you trust that first and foremost, which that's why the singing and that's why the voicing of our needs and all the things that we do. And then we watch it like actually expand in our life. Like whatever we're doing for ourselves is actually what we're going to be seeing in our relationships. So I think the theme here is just creating a safe environment for ourselves to actually be in that place we need to be, and trusting that when we go there, not all hell will break loose. Because we do know as women, we feel like we have to hold it all together. But so often it's not true, you know? And I think it takes away from our men too, our partners. And it's this, if you have a same sex, whatever, I'm not trying to single out just man-woman relationships. I feel like all relationships, these dynamics are true when you are sensing you really need something from your partner, finding that place in you first and then watching it change. It's such a powerful thing, which is why when people come to me alone, so often it changes the relationship. It's a powerful thing to own. Like we have so much power. And since you are single and you're wanting to attract, this is such a powerful time to like do the things for you that you want your partner to do for you.
It's been a transformative couple of 8 months, I would
everything.
say.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm finding my voice as a mother, standing up against, some things that have been terrible co-parenting wise. I'm standing up for my daughter with things.
Wow.
I'm really
You're
learning,
giving yourself a voice.
Yeah, I'm learning how to have a voice and stand up for myself and have boundaries and all of that.
That's huge. And you're taking a stand for yourself, and that is the opposite of abuse, like being crushed, right? So you're not allowing that yourself to do that to yourself, and you're not going to then attract that. That's how you trust yourself, that you're doing the work now so that you don't actually ever see that in a relationship again. And I didn't say that part, but when Jeff and I were separated for that 3 months, that's what I did. I was like, all right, now I need to focus on me. What is it that I want? Because I was being the Stepford wife, which didn't backfired completely, by the way. When we're doing the thing, we think we create what we avoid, right? So I was trying to avoid rejection. That's exactly what I got by rejecting myself and not showing up as my true self in the marriage. And so when we had a separation, I had that moment of, how do I want him to be there for me or love me? And what is it that I can do for myself? That's when I enrolled in graduate school. And that's when I really began looking at and building that self love and breaking these patterns and all that. And so it was a pretty quick turnaround in regards to then Jeff coming around and being like, I need to do this, all this stuff. But I firmly believe it was because I started with me. And I think there's just such a beautiful opportunity when you're single. And if you're not and you're in a relationship, you can still do it. And it still starts with you. It's just harder because there's more distracting things pulling at you.
Thank you.
Thank you
for your story and for all this advice. I'm taking away a lot.
Oh,
I know, me too. So much.
And I hope our listeners are taking away a lot. And if not, they should find you.
yes.
You don't have to be in person, right? You do if there's somebody in Arkansas.
Do in person. I will do. I have done in person for couples, but I usually my main way of doing it is over Zoom.
Yeah.
Or if people don't want a camera, then it's audio. But that's my main method of working with people, and
so they can come from anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
I have clients internationally. Yeah, in all different parts of the world.
Finding you where? On your website, on your Instagram?
So at Coach Jenn 2 N's Wolfe on Instagram and TikTok, and my website, same thing, CoachJennWolfe.com. And
oh my gosh, and take the quiz.
And take the
quizzes.
quiz. I have multiple quizzes if you want to know your core energy, if you like feminine or masculine, if you want to know your attachment style. There's one more on there. I can't remember what it is.
Communication.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Your
I'm gonna go take them all.
communication style. Yes. Communication, because that's one of the main issues.
I have to take the 2 other ones. I did the attachment one, and I have to take the 2 other ones.
Take them. And then tell me your results.
Yeah.
I really want to know. But yeah, starting with that, because it just is about self-awareness, and then even knowing where you're starting to, it's again, it's all about empowering ourselves. And even though it's a relationship, we have so much like power and ability to shift that just by starting with you. So, and also I'm here to talk to anybody who wants to DM me or whatever and say that you heard the podcast and talk about any of these topics.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Reach out, everybody.
My favorite thing to talk about. So
you have a gift. I think you've unlocked so many things that I felt stuck in.
Oh my gosh.
At least for me.
That's my tagline. Unlock your
really?
Unlock truth.
Oh my God.
Stop.
It is.
I was stuck in the sticky mud.
Oh
yeah,
gosh,
you
I
unlock
love-
stuff. Thank you.
That's so amazing. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad. And I want updates, guys.
Yeah, for sure.
We could do a
Thanks.
podcast in the future and talk about the updates of what we talked about today.
Yeah, if I found my
Let's revisit
perfect
this.
masculine
Yes.
and worked on myself.
Yes. And all the things. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys, for
Thank
having
you
me.
for coming.
Thank you.
That was Coach Jenn Wolfe.
I'm enlightened.
And I'm like,
I have my homework for the next year of being single and working on myself in my single era.
but also not having the pressure to just work on yourself. I found that so interesting regarding to you and to everybody who is single and who feels like I have to figure myself out first completely before I can dive into a next relationship. And that was so interesting that she said, you don't.
Right.
Like, it's great to go there and to start and stuff, but you don't have to be the perfect person before you can get into a relationship again. You should figure out yourself a little bit, but you can also do this within your next relationship, which I find fascinating and great that somebody finally said that.
This is true. She gave us permission to have a relationship that's not maybe perfect. It's something we can grow together through.
Yeah, and work on it while you're in it.
And heal each other through.
So interesting too, the feminine and the masculine sides that she was talking about. I feel like we should rename those. Because you always think about like, oh, this is so stereotype and like the man and the woman. But she keeps saying like, this doesn't mean man and woman. Like it's for same-sex couples too, or sometimes the man has the more feminine style and the woman has the more masculine style or whatever. We should rename those. We should do just like the plus and minus or whatever.
And the yin and yang.
And the yin and yang that goes together, because it's not just like men and women. That's not what it means.
Right.
Right? So I found that fascinating what she was saying about these things.
Yeah. I just feel so enlightened after talking to her.
So what are you going to do now? Are you going to go out?
I'm still going to wait a while before I reactivate my Bumble and Hinge profile. Yeah, but I would be open to going out, I think. Yeah.
Let's go.
Okay. Right now, let's go get a drink. Even though this podcast is over, we would love to keep the conversation going in the comment section. So don't be shy of that little box down there and leave us a comment and share your story, because we would love to hear from you. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Bye.